Hi Flosstube, my name is Nitya, and this is my Flosstube channel, Daybreak Stitchery, and I'm here to talk about cross stitch and what I've been cross stitching over the month of March. And as ever, I'm so happy to be part of the Flosstube community and to have Flosstube to rely on, because March has been a pretty stressful month for me and for my family, and there has been stitching and Flosstube as a distraction and as kind of mental relief. So so happy and so grateful that Flosstube exists and that stitching exists and that we have time to do it. The nice thing though is that because of the stress of the month, which I'll be talking about a little bit, but my stitching has been even more all over the place than usual, and that means I have lots to share. So let's get on with it. So the first thing I'm going to show you is something that I know a few of you have been asking about. You're curious about the progress on it. So I'm starting with, I want to start with an old project that I just took off my wall, because it's going to give me a chance to share the name of a Flosstuber who I want to share with you. So I just took this off my wall in the hallway, and it's by Seba Designs. This is an old project, like maybe 10 years old. Seba Designs, and it's called Bindali. And I'll put a link to this and to everything I talk about today in the description. So if you're, interested, you can check things out. And the reason why I picked this to tell you about, it's all backstitched, by the way. I don't know if you can see that. So backstitching is, when you stitch only lines, you're not completing an X, but you're stitching lines. You're stitching along the boxes or diagonals, and it's sort of like outlining a design instead of stitching solid X's through it. And I picked this one because Minnie Gray, her channel is called All X's. She's a longtime Flosstuber. She stitched this. This is one of her 2020 stitches. And when I saw it in her list, I thought, oh, this is going to be great because I want to talk about Minnie. Minnie might be my cross stitch hero. The number of projects she's able to complete. So definitely check out her Flosstube. I think many people will already know about her because she's a longtime Flosstuber. She's amazing. She does so much, and her projects are just so, every single one of Minnie's projects, you're like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. She did one recently. She's working on one now. That's a full coverage cross stitch piece of the MLK Memorial, Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington, D.C. Beautiful. I mean, she's basically stitching like a photograph of that memorial. It's really, really beautiful. And she stitched this. She recently, I think she said she restarted her blog, or I don't know if it was on pause for a while. But her blog is amazing too, because she has menu options where you can click on like 2020, 2019, 2018, going backwards. And she has pictures of everything she finished during that year. It is incredible what she's able to finish. I'm so in awe of her. And the humbling thing was that she found me. She commented on one of my videos earlier this month, because Denise, who I love from Black Ribbon Stitch Studio, mentioned me in one of her videos. So people have been kind of finding me that way. But when I saw, Minnie's videos are like, when you're eager to have a free weekend or a free vacation where you can binge watch an entire series, that's what you want to do with Minnie's videos. You just would be so excited to sit and watch everything she's been doing. So Minnie Gray, All X's, is her Flosstube channel. And then I will link Denise. Denise is fantastic too. Denise is doing she's Black Ribbon Stitch Studio. She did a video recently where she had some interesting haul to show. And then the video before that, she showed off her beautiful Long Dog Sampler. She's doing that crossword one from Long Dog Sampler. It has these pretty, how Long Dog Sampler has like very busy patterns all over. She started that, and it's so pretty. So, 2 Flosstubers to check out. And then, yeah, Bindali from Seba Designs. I've been trying to show, last video, I started to show off old projects too and tell a little bit about them. So I'm going to try to do as I don't have many old projects to show off, but as long as I do, I'll keep trying to do that. Shall we talk about some works in progress? Because I did touch on a few of them this month. And this is the one I know a few of you have asked about and you've been wanting to see progress. So this is an excerpt. There we go. This is an excerpt from the poem by Amanda Gorman called The Hill We Climb. And this was the poem that she read at the presidential inauguration that happened in January. It was very hopeful, kind of hope-inspiring poem. So a lot of us had very emotional reactions to it. And I wanted to stitch a part of it as a kind of souvenir of that moment, of that time. So this was one of my WIPGO goals. And the WIPGO goal was to pick it up for 5 days. So that's what I did. Although, my 5 days this month is not 5 full days of stitching, as I'm sure is true for most of you. When you pick up, it might be 20 minutes on one day or an hour on one day, or if you're lucky on a weekend, a few hours. So it's kind of cobbled together with moments of time over the month. But it says so far, if we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is and this is going to say, promise to glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it. So I'm like definitely over the halfway point of this. It's almost, this big promise to glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it. So there's not much. And then Amanda's name, I'm going to stitch on the bottom of it. So it's coming along. This is PR 152 by Silks for You. It alternates between aqua, purple, and blue. Really great for stitching fonts. I encourage, this has been such a good experience in font stitching. So I picked up 3 fonts from Etsy. They were Christie Patterns. Christie Patterns has a pack of fonts, like tiny fonts. That's where I'm getting this tiny font right here. So I'm getting that from that pack. So Easy Patterns was one of these fonts, but I couldn't tell you which one. They're all mixed. I mixed up different fonts. So from different, font designers. And then, Lifted Spirit Patterns is one. I kind of feel like it might be one of them is this sort of cursive-y kind of font, but I don't remember who did what. But I'll link them below if you want to check them out. I really encourage anyone to find a quote that moves you from anything, like a proverb or a quote or something your family member says frequently, and stitch it. Support font designers, because it's not easy to design fonts. When I tried to lay this out, I really empathized with cross-stitch designers and people who design it. It is a lot of work to lay it out and to plan it. And I wanted to say something else. What did I want to say? Oh, it just looks beautiful. I mean, I was never a font stitcher before, but now I actually have another one I've started, and I have plans for others too. So they work up pretty quick because, see, there's so much space in between. So, why not? Find a quote that you love and go for it. Stitch it up. And what a great way to show off variegated threads too, right? All that layering of different colors. It's beautiful. Amanda's poem comes out in published form on May 30th. What's today? The 27th. And I've pre-ordered a copy. If you also really loved her poem, or like the poems of any poets are going to write if they're supported economically and financially. So we got to support them. So, buy a copy of her poem, and, let's give them the financial support that they need to keep coming up with this creative work that keeps us going. It uplifts us and keeps us going. It comes out March 30th. I'm going to link below. When I buy books, I try to buy them on bookshop.org rather than Amazon. At bookshop.org, you can select like your local bookshop in your neighborhood, and the proceeds go to them to support a local business instead of going to Amazon. So I'll put the link there. And then if you happen to go to bookshop.org, you can see if your local bookstore is represented there, and you can support them, or you can pick a random local bookshop to support too. Oh, this was the fabric. Tuscan Sun. It's by Witchelt, and I learned something. You can really tell Witchelt linen because see how see-through it is? You can see my sleeve back here behind it. It's very gauzy. So like if you have a Witchelt linen and you don't have a label on it, you might be able to tell just from how gauzy it is what fabric it is. This was a clearance linen from 123 Stitch. I have a couple of clearance fabrics from there that I've used in today's projects. So I love looking for clearance items from there. I buy a lot of my DMC from 123 Stitch. It's an online shop, and I don't know if they have a brick and mortar store. I've never looked into it, but since that, if I need a bunch of DMC, I'll also search for clearance linen or clearance Ada, and if they have something interesting, I'll pick that up. And so some of my stash is, built up of that clearance fabric from them. So Amanda Gorman, The Hill We Climb, an excerpt from The Hill We Climb. Next one, it is a work in progress. It's a WIP, but it's also technically a restart. I restarted Pandemic by Long Dog Samplers. And I had started it in either November or December, maybe. And it's in one of my earlier Flosstube videos, so you can see it. I was self-variegating the threads. So I had chosen like an orange and gray palette, and I would do a few stitches in one color, then change it up, then change it up. It's really beautiful, but it's very time-consuming. And also the fabric was very enormous and difficult. I stitch in hand. It was unmanageable. And I never went back to it. I never found myself wanting to stitch on it. So I had ordered a bunch of different shades of blue DMC from 123 Stitch because I needed blues for another project that I'm going to be showing today. And one of the blues that I ended up not using for that one that was left over is this lovely DMC 820. I don't know what the technical color is. I should have looked it up, but it's like a bright jewel-toned blue, bright blue, beautiful. And so I thought, well, I have a 32, I love stitching on 32 count Murano, and I had a platinum, I'll show it to you. I had this platinum Murano. It's like the palest pale gray, basically, that you can get before it becomes white. So it is a neutral tone. It's not white. The DMC equivalent of this color is 3033, in case you're curious to check it out. But I just put those two together. I put that blue and this platinum Lugana. It's Lugana. I think we're all calling it Lugana, but technically the 32 count by Zweigert, they call it Murano. They have different names for their different counts, but whatever. Lugana, Murano. It's 32 count, 1/1. What a difference monochrome makes when you stitch on monochromatic, because I was having to pay when I was self-variegating the threads before. I was not only paying attention to what colors were going where, but I was also paying attention to the pattern, which is very busy, as you can see. And now I don't have to worry about the color. I can just stitch with one. It works up so fast. I only picked this up for three times this month. That was it. So look at how far I got. Page 1, to give you a reference. So let me show you the patterning. So this is the whole pattern. It's enormous. I'm up here. So I've got just this top part done here, and page 1 goes to about here. So it's not that far to a page 1 finish. Usually I don't do pages. What I normally do is I work in bands. So I was thinking of basically doing this band across, and then I come back and do the next band across. It's kind of like that. I prefer working that way. But I'm eager to keep going on this one. I'm really pleased with how it's coming out. And this color is so beautiful. And it's just kind of nice to stitch with DMC because it's so easy to find. So this was a happy restart. I'm on a restart kick. So this is the first of several. Yeah, I will keep going with this. It's been really easy. I'm being very, I'm deliberately stitching slowly on this because on 32 count 1/1, it would be challenging to have to pull stitches out. Doing frogging, ripping it up. So I'm going slowly. I'm doing like little bits so that I can reference those bits with other bits. And then I'm coming in from another direction and doing a little bit so that I can reference that with what's already there, and just kind of checking everything out and reference to everything else to make sure I'm putting the stitches in the right spot. I'm trying not to rush through it. I'm, like I think so many of us feel like when we reach a spot where we have to pull stitches out, we just give up on it or we put it aside, and I don't want to do that. That was Pandemic Sampler by Long Dog Samplers. Okay, next one is the Modern Folk Embroidery 2021 Stitch Along Fruits of Plenty. And you can see I haven't gotten very far on it, but I did pick it up. I think I'm going to fall behind this month on it, and that's just how it'll be. It's this part right here is the March part. And this is going to be the edge border. So like once this octagon, when I put the border on this, that's as far as it goes. And then after that, it'll work down. So April will be over here, down here underneath the bowl of fruit. It's still really pretty. I like it. I'm using this part here is Smoke Gray. It's by Sulky, and that both threads are Sulky. The green is French Green by Sulky too. So it is looking pretty. I'm still enjoying it. I didn't pick it up. I had a lot of other things I was picking up this month. You know how it goes. You just get into a routine with some stitching, and then others have to fall aside for a little bit. So Modern Folk Embroidery, the 2021 Stitch Along, the hashtag for that is hashtag MFESAL 2021. And then I have another restart, and it's a restart for the better. I'm happier with this one. So this was one from Ink Circles, and it's called Reflections of Amsterdam. Hold it back here. Do you see how it's buildings? I don't know how much you can see. There are buildings, 3 buildings. I've started a 4th one. 1, 2, 3 buildings, and here's a 4th one. There's a tulip in the corner, and there's a bicycle here. And so Reflections of Amsterdam, it has symbols representing the city of Amsterdam. So tulips, because like a lot of tulips are cultivated in the Netherlands. These are the buildings that run along the canals in Amsterdam. And then Amsterdam is a big cycling city. And actually, I picked up this pattern originally because I try to stitch a lot of things with cycles on them because my husband, that's his passion. And he runs Chicago Bike Adventures. It's a cycling tourism company here in Chicago. And I had originally stitched this on, I haven't been giving you any of the fabric information. Let me start doing that. The original one was on a light mocha, 28 count, 1/1, and I made terrible mistakes in it. I stitched it on the wrong side of the fabric. So like the beautiful marbling of the light mocha was on the wrong side. So it was error after error on the old one. This is on 40 count woodland, pretty, like a brown neutral color. It's a Newcastle linen. And because it's 40 count, the stitches are bigger. And it's easier to pull out. Like if I happen to make a mistake, it's much, much easier to deal with. It's stitched with my very first classic Colorworks. It's called Wavy Navy. And I don't know if you maybe with my camera, you won't see the variegation, but there is variegation. It's a slate blue and a navy blue alternating. And I can definitely see it here. You probably won't be able to see it that well because my camera's not super. See how, yeah, you can kind of see it. See how, like this building is a little bit darker than the one next to it. It's like a gray blue and a navy blue alternating. Very, very pretty. I chose the color because my husband basically wears like 3 colors. He wears blue, gray, and like brown. So I definitely want it. This is like anything with a cycle on it is kind of a tribute to him. I want him represented in my stitching too. And Ink Circles makes a whole series of reflections of square patterns. They're all 115 by 115 stitches. Do I have the pattern to show you? Yeah. This is what it's going to look like. So I'm basically in a corner. It's a symmetrical pattern. So I'm in a corner here. And you'll see the buildings, then see how there's multiple bicycles going around and more buildings, and then a windmill in the center, tulips on the corners. And this Reflections of series, there are several of them available by Ink Circles, and they're all 115 by 115. And I'd like to do more of them. There's a Reflections of Paris that has, Eiffel Towers and like something that looks like maybe cathedrals on it. There's what else? So Reflections of New York. There's a Reflections of New Orleans, which is beautiful. I want to do that one. Michelle from Michelle Bendy Stitchy is doing that one, and she's using this beautiful variegated thread from Fiberlicious. And the motifs are so cute. There's like fleur-de-lis patterns, Mardi Gras masks, very intricate. Like Ink Circles always does these interesting geometric patterns with lots of really cool motifs in them. So I love this one. I love all the little cycles going around. This is especially meaningful this month because I mentioned earlier that we're going through we're having some stress this month, and one of the stressful moments is that we are looking for a home, which is exciting. It's new. There's a lot to learn. But we came to the realization very quickly that we would not be able to afford a home in Chicago, which my husband and I are Chicagoans. We love Chicago. We've been here for a long time. I've been here for 25 years. I grew up in the suburbs, but I moved to Chicago to go to college and then, never left. So 25 years I've been here, and I've lived in different neighborhoods, and I've always rented. No, I haven't. I used to own too before I met my husband. But it's just becoming so expensive and we can't afford it. So it was really heartbreaking and very emotional to come to terms with that. Being a Chicagoan is such a part of my identity. It feels like me. So to not be able to afford a home here, a permanent home here, it was a very kind of heartbreaking and emotional time. So stitching a city felt like a nice, a tribute, a connection to urban life. And to be fair, the neighborhood now that we're looking at, the town we're looking at is just outside of Chicago. It's a 15-minute drive to downtown. It's still on the public transit line. So, we're coming to terms with it. And we're going to have a home, which is exciting. So that's been we've had very many emotional ups and downs dealing with this whole thing. So that kind of added to some of the stressful moments. And we've been home searching. So that means a lot of evenings when I would have been stitching, we were out looking at homes. So we lost evening time, to that. But it's going to turn out the results will be good because we're working on it. We have a home we like. An offer was accepted. So now things are in motion. So hopefully it'll all work out. So Reflections of Amsterdam, this would be really fun because they're all 115 by 115. It would be really cool to do like maybe 4 of them or even just 2 of them. They would make really good companion pieces on a wall because they will all be symmetrical, and you could get like similar frames or different frames, it would look nice together. There's one that's, there are country ones too. So there's a Reflections of Canada. There's a Reflections of Norway, I love that. That's the one I want to do next, actually, because it has Viking motifs all over it, like the long ships with the dragon heads and then helmets with the horns. It's really cool looking. I like it. Ink Circles and Classic Colorworks thread on that one. Okay. I mean, a restart, kind of a work in progress, but a restart too. So, should we maybe switch to new starts? Because, why not? Why not? So I have, 4 projects that I started for #stitchasia. And that was started by Abby, from Abby Bella Stitch, and Ellen from Maximum Cross Stitch Power Hour. And, I misunderstood their intentions for like why they started it. I thought it was for Asian American Heritage Month, which is actually in May. So that's not what it was. They had just been talking and they realized that between the both of them, they had a lot of Asian themed motifs for stitching. And so they just decided to stitch them, and came up with a hashtag and shared it. And they encouraged other people to stitch Asian motifs because stitching is international and multicultural, and lots of cultures have heritage in stitching. And, stitching isn't just European or American samplers. It can represent lots of cultures and has represented lots of cultures over time, right? Stitching is a human thing. Lots of cultures have been stitching for a long, long time. So I started 4 things for Stitchasia. And do you just spot Asia patterns everywhere now? I do. I see them all over the place. And, so let me show you what I started. And this is like an ongoing thing. I would want to stitch lots more from Asia too. So I started another ink circles. This is Henna Mandela. So Henna Mandela also is 115 by 115 stitches. So there are lots and lots of nice patterns like this that work out to perfect squares, making it really easy to plan some different framing options, hanging and framing options. But henna is a dye. It's a plant, and it's a dye that's made from crushing up leaves of this plant, and you make a paste out of it. You put it into piping tubes, like very thin piping tubes. And at least in India, in Pakistan, I know they do it in Afghanistan too. And then I've seen it in Morocco too, in North Africa. You squeeze patterns onto your hands, and you leave it to dry, the paste. And then when you flake it off, when it dries and you flake it off, it dyes. It leaves a reddish brown dye on your hands. So that's the inspiration, I think, for this, because a lot of these motifs look kind of like the patterns that are drawn on hands. In India, it's usually, I actually found a video. I'm going to link it below if you're curious about seeing what it looks like when they do this. It's done before weddings usually, like the women all get together and decorate their hands before weddings. So let me show you. I love this so much. Isn't it so pretty? And I'm using let me tell you, I'm forgetting to give thread and fabric information today. So let me get myself together here. PR68 silks for you. And PR68 is supposed to be a mix of red and black. That's the variegation, red to black, and then all the colors in between as they blend into one another. But what's happened is the blackest part of the black still has a little bit of red mixed into it. So it ends up looking like I would call it like a black cherry color, if you can imagine that. It's got the ever so slight, it's black with a slight tinge of red in it. So really it looks like a dark burgundy, a super deep dark burgundy, or I call it like a black cherry color. So the variegation is from that bright red to that deepest color. And it's perfect because henna designs, when you do them on your hands, they have different shades of red or like red browns in them. So I felt like it was it's not the called for in the design. It's a Gloriana. I think it's called Clay. I don't remember the color. But that's not the one I used. I already had the silks for you. A couple of videos ago, maybe 2 or 3 videos ago, I had shown a teeny tiny Quaker motif that I had done, a little small. It was a squirrel inside a Quaker kind of octagon shape. And that was with this same silks for you. I have plenty of this, so why not? This and Amanda Gorman, The Hill We Climb. Those were my Whip Go goals for this month. And I did something, I tweaked my Whip Go a little bit. So I kept the goals, but I changed the project. So I had 2 other projects lined up to pull from my stash. One to work on it for 5 days, and then one to reach either a quarter or a half finish. But instead of keeping the projects that I had originally intended, I chose 2 projects that I knew I was going to work on this month that I wanted to work towards a finish. So Amanda Gorman, I picked up for 5 days. And then this one I did instead of whatever was on my Whip Go, whatever I had intended to do, but I needed to get it to a quarter or a half finish. And I definitely reached a quarter finish already. I think I can do a half because This right here is the halfway line. So I just have like this little bit here and then this little part to fill in, and there's still a few days left in March. So I'm going to try really hard to reach a half day finish, and then I will have met my WIPGO goals for the month. I think this will be a good way. Like, I've been watching Flosstubes and also seeing on Instagram where people feel like they're not able to meet their WIPGO goals. So then it feels overwhelming. So I think, WIPGO is whatever you make of it. And if you want to let it go, let it go. Or if you want to tweak it, I find this very helpful now, because what I'm going to do, like the new numbers were just called, it's 3 and maybe 21, but double check that. I'm whatever I have on my WIPGO board for projects, I'm going to continue to make the project this Henna Mandela and Amanda Gorman, because then I will continue each month. I will work those 2 words of finish that way. Whatever the stitch goal was, whether it's picking it up for 10 days or finishing a certain number of motifs, I'll do that. It's just that instead of doing it on whatever I had originally planned, I'm going to keep doing them on these. So I'd like to have this ready to frame and put together in our new home once we eventually get there. So I think that's a way to make WIPGO manageable and make it feel like you're actually working towards something too. So it's flexible, and it's I think it's it's what you make of it. It's whatever you want it to be. So it's for you. The stitching has to be for you in the end, right? To make you happy, to make us happy. Ink circles, Henna Mandela. I picked up, I have to cut back on my cross-stitch spending, especially now that we're, buying a home. I need to rein it in. And I have, like, even just in these few months since I've started Flosstube, I've got enough projects to keep me going probably for years. Like, if I actually sit and finish these, I have plenty. But that being said, at the beginning of the month, I did pick up some patterns from the Needlework Expo that went on. It's where it's like the wholesale market for cross-stitch designers, where they market their new designs to local shops. And so I have 3 local shops that I shopped at and picked up a few patterns. And Ink Circles had a new geometric pattern like this, 115 by 115. It was called Blue Velvet. And I don't know if I'll necessarily stitch it with the intended blue, but I have plenty of other variegated threads that I can use on that. So we'll see. I'm excited to get that one. I really enjoy these. And mention the fabric. This is another clearance fabric that I picked up from 123 Stitch. It is 18 count dill by Picture This Plus. Boy, was it easy to stitch on 18 count Ada. Since I started Flosstube, and since, before that I had been watching so many Flosstubes, and so many people stitch on linen, and I had never stitched on linen before Flosstube. I didn't even know that was a thing. I grew up, I think, like many of you, stitching on, that stiff white Ada, and a lot of people still like it, which is great, whatever works for you. Stiff white Ada that came in kits, or, it came in the tubes, like the Charles Craft, the tubes, or folded up in packets. And those fabrics are stiff, and they work great because they provide their own tension, which is nice. But boy, was it nice to stitch on this. I mean, it is really, really soft. It feels great in your hands. And Ada, you forget how easy, when you stitch on linen for a while and you're new to it like me, then you return to Ada, this worked up so fast because I'm still getting used to, I tend to stitch over 2 on linen. So just keeping track of where I'm putting my needle. I miss it sometimes. I put it in the wrong space. It's not a habit yet for me. So Ada just makes things so easy. This was such an easy stitch. So easy to do. So I'm picking up more. Picture This Plus Ada, 18 count. I love look at the coverage on it. No gaps. I'm loving it. So there will be more 18 count Ada in my future. I looked up, I had never used Picture This Plus before. So I looked on their website, and their website is not, you can't order like everyday, like a normal consumer stitcher like me, you can't order on their website. They only sell to wholesalers. But they had a really funny thing. What was it? I quoted it here. They have a list of like 4 or 5 of their dye patterns. One of them is dill, where they said they are no longer able to make them. The source of the dyes have mysteriously disappeared, never to be seen again. I thought that was cute. It was so dramatic. But dill is one of them. Dill is this beautiful mustard, very like kind of a mottled mustard with like an ever so slight tinge of green in the mix. It's really, really pretty. It's a very nice neutral color to stitch on, but it's going to be discontinued now. It's not going to be available. I think, which is why it was on clearance. 123 Stitch also had Mellow. That was another one that's going to be discontinued. That's like a mottled yellow, kind of pale yellow. So just interesting, sources of dye for these fabric dyers. I'm sure that changes a lot. So if you are intending to stitch, multiple pieces in the same color fabric, it's probably a good idea to buy all the fabric at the same time. You never know what's going to happen. Okay, Stitchasia. I have a few more to show you for that. So I had shown you this book in my last video, Balade en Asie. It's by Véronique Inginger, and it's just full of Asian motifs. And I told you I had really loved in the India part of it, these dancers. I wanted to make a sampler for my friend Geeta, who does this kind of dance. Bharatanatyam is what it's called. And I'm going to put a video link below, or just like I'm going to try to put little quick snippets of cultural things, because I know a lot of us are interested in learning more about different cultures. So I'll put a little dance video clip there so you can see what the dance looks like. You'll recognize like all these poses are in there. I started it and I love it. Let me show you what I did. Two of the dancers are in. Aren't they pretty? I'm making this a sampler. So there's going to be different color dancers all over it. And then on the top, I'm putting there are 3 religious kind of figures from Hinduism that I'm going to put there. And then I'll put this dancer girls all over. So, and then there are a couple other like paisley and floral lotus motifs and things. I'll use those too. Here we go. So pretty, right? I love it. I'm really impressed. I wasn't sure if you would be able to tell, after stitching it, what it is. Let me hold it up a little closer. They're turning out really cute. And originally I was going to use just one color for this. I was going to use this magenta. It is a Silks for You PR 141. Very, very pretty. It is very slightly variegated. When I look at it here, there's like a couple of shades of magenta in there, a lighter and a darker, but really I know you can't see it that well. But then I kept finding all these beautiful DMCs that I have too. Like this teal one is DMC 3847, and I thought that would be pretty. I have this DMC 3844. So I think I'm going to make all different color dancers, and I might even repeat some of the motifs. We'll see. We'll see about that. But I just love it. This is 35 count Edinburgh linen, and the coverage is a little, if I notice, I really like things to be very well covered, and I can notice a little bit of fabric in there. Let me hold it up close so you can see too. Oh, you can see the variegation in the magenta. You can see it a little bit now. So it's coverage enough. It's not going to be, it doesn't bother me that there's little bits of fabric poking through. It's just like a natural, it's Edinburgh linen, 35 count. It's just like a neutral, natural tone. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I can't wait to find more. I'm just like poking through my DMC collection to find other bright. I have this color in cotton that I might use too. Like a lighter teal. The costumes, you'll see it if you check out the video I share. The costumes, the dance outfits that they wear for this are always brightly colored and they have gold borders on them. They look really great on stage. They're very bright, cheerful colors. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. You know, I'll throw in probably a DMC 550. It's like a really bright, deep purple. That might play into this too. So I'm going to try to do maybe a motif or two each month. I did this in an evening. I probably had like a couple hours one evening. So it's not too bad. Works up, you know, you can work up a motif pretty quickly. That dance is called Bharatanatyam, and I'll link the video below in case you're curious and you want to see it. The video I found was really cool because they did some kind of video effect where like she would do a pose and then you could see 3 copies of her doing the pose right above it. It's cool. It looks good. It's also part of the stitchasia hashtag. I have, what else? Let me grab another one here to show you. Okay, so I needed to grab something very important for Stitchasia, and that is, I think a lot of people are stitching on Lila's studio patterns for Stitchasia because she's a designer of Asian descent. So Stitchasia is not only increasing representation of what we stitch, but in who we support for our stitching too. So this is Lila's studio, and this is the bee sampler. And you don't see any bees on it yet because I haven't gotten to them yet. Can I show you a picture? Yes, I can. It's going to look like this. And I don't think I will probably keep it flat and frame it. I don't think I will finish it in the pillow like this. This motif here, this flower up here is what this is right here. This part. This is on my very first fabrics from X Jew Designs. I think the dyer is named Julia. So X and then Jew for Julia, J-U Designs. She's on Etsy and is it Kitten Stitcher, I think, also sells her fabrics. And this is a really beautiful fabric called light blue violet. So it's like a kind of lilac lavender color. And I thought it would be a great contrast because basically these colors that you see here, there's this mustard. This is my very first Gentle Arts threads. Let me show you the two. The black is DMC 310, and then these two. The paler one, this one is mustard seed, and then the bright one is sunflower. They're really nice. They're pretty colors. It's a nice balance because one is a little more muted and one is a little bit brighter. And those are the only 3 colors in the whole pattern. So you can I'll show you it again. See that? It's mostly DMC 310 black and then alternating the other 2 colors. I thought this blue violet would be a great contrast, and it is. I love it. It doesn't look like it'll be very long. I don't have the stitch count on here, so I'm not sure what the dimensions are, but like these worked up pretty quickly. I only stitched on this for probably a couple visits with it, so I'll hold it up a little closer so you can see too. Very cute, very pretty motifs. This is 32 count, this blue violet fabric, and I'm using 3 threads. I've mentioned it before. On 32 count, I do not feel like 2 threads are enough coverage, and I don't like the look where the fabric is poking through behind the stitches. So I'm using three strands over 2, and the coverage is excellent. It's nice and thick pattern. Nice and thick stitches. All the fabric's being covered up. The only issue is I'll have to see how it works out. The pattern called for only one skein of sunflower and 1 skein of mustard seed. But now since I'm using more strands, I may need to get more. We'll see how it goes. I'll go as far as I can with it. But this is Lila's Studio Bee Sampler. A lot of people are stitching on Lila's Studio, I think. Denise has her start on Nevermore. It's got like a raven in there. It's beautiful. It's got a really pretty black pattern on the top. And I think some people are stitching on that one. She has several. She has really nice patterns. Her website is kind of interesting. She's got some cute freebies too, so you can check there and see. I'll link the this one. I don't remember if I don't think she sells on her website. So she has an Etsy store. I think that's where I picked up this pattern, or possibly at 123 Stitch. Bee Sampler by Lila Studio. And then I have one more for Stitchasia, and then I have a few that are not for few new starts that are not for Stitchasia. So I'll show those to you as well. What is this? Oh, well, this is that magenta I was using for the dancer sampler. I'll show you real quick because it's just so pretty. I don't know. See that? There are parts that are really dark too. I don't know why it's lying here, but there you go. You get to see it. Okay. Oh, here's Bee Sampler. The stitch count is 188 by 84. It's not that big. So that'll work up pretty quickly, I think. Okay, one more for Stitchasia. And this is another fonts sampler that I'm stitching. I think, what font did I use? It could have been one of the fonts from that pack of 10 fonts from Christie Patterns. I'll look and I'll link it below. So Stitchasia, the hashtag in this whole initiative to increase representation, it's also kind of coinciding with something really terrible happening here in the US. There have been more and more attacks on Asian Americans in the US. And there was a terrible shooting earlier this month at couple of Korean spas, and I don't know, it just makes me so sad when things like that, when any group, if it's a mosque shooting or any, any offense against Black people or anything, it just makes me think it's not the country who we are, and it's who do we want to be? Do we want to be inclusive and accept people who are different than us? Or do we want to be like judgmental and only have things one way? I mean, I think we're at a moment where we have to decide who we want to be, and this country is struggling with that now. And then all these tragedies are happening. So then it makes you think of tragedies in history too, right? And, the one that we all know about is the internment camps during World War II. Japanese American families were pulled from their homes. It reminds me a lot of when we taught in my French classes, my older students, we talk about during World War II in France. When French families reported on Jewish French families, and all of a sudden, police would arrive at your door and you'd just grab whatever you can, you'd have to leave. And we know those families were eventually sent to camps, right? Well, we had internment camps in the US for Japanese Americans. So they were forced from their homes. They just took whatever, they were Americans of Japanese descent. But because of the conflict during World War II against the US and Japan and the attack of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese, Japanese Americans were grouped into that hate, and they were taken from their homes. And, those things leave generations of trauma. And a person who's really outspoken about that whole event in history is someone who lived through it. George Takei, who's an actor. We all know him from Star Trek. And, he's a Japanese American, and when he was 4, his family was forced from home into one of these internment camps, and he has memories of that time, and he talks about the trauma that his parents experienced even afterwards. They were homeless for a while because, a lot of these families, they had property and things taken from them, right? So they couldn't return to the things they had before. And that, it leaves a legacy of, it could leave a legacy of hate, or it could change the way you think about life and how you want people to be treated. So he has a quote. It starts with this, but I don't know if I'm going to look it up on my phone. We should indeed keep calm in the face of difference. Let me look it up. I want to read the whole quote to you. We should indeed keep calm in the face of difference and live our lives in a state of inclusion and wonder at the diversity of humanity. I love that sentiment. It's anything that talks about us being inclusive, including people who are different than us and not letting differences separate us. That's what causes hate, and that's what causes war, right? Focusing on the differences. So I'm going to stitch, this is 38 count filbert by Access Commodities. It's legacy linen. and I'm using DMC 803. This is one of the many blues I picked up for another project that's coming up. My idea is to continue to stitch snippets of that quote. So I got the first part. I'm going to do like maybe the next part here, a little bit here, and then finish it off here. And then in the spaces in between, I want to do Asian motifs in blue, maybe more Asian motifs from my book, my Balada Nazi book. But I was also thinking of maybe stitching symbols, of like from either different religions or different other groups that maybe sometimes get marginalized, but do those in shades of blue. So I was thinking of maybe, George Takei is Buddhist. So maybe doing like a Buddhist hand or, like a Buddha head or something in blue. I was even thinking of maybe doing like he's also outspoken on, GLBTQ rights. So maybe doing like a, pride flag, but in shades of blue. I'm really not sure yet about what motifs I want to put in, but I want to decorate the spaces in between the quotes with some motifs or references to Asia too. And I think stitching, this is like a really good example of how stitching can be like it marks time. You know, when we stitch, we take time, but it also serves as a timekeeper of like what's going on while this person was stitching. So whenever I stitch on this, I'm always going to think about, you know, Asian American history and our history in the US and how Asian Americans fit into that. There's an interview with George Takei that I haven't seen yet. It's through HBO and a foundation that I'm not going to remember, but I'm going to link that below in case you're interested in here. He's a really fascinating speaker. He's really funny. He's got a good sense of humor. And he, you know, I think it's really important to hear firsthand accounts of these sorts of events. And he's a very compelling storyteller. So, if you watch it, tell me about it. I'm going to be watching it too. I want to see what he's got to say about everything. I've seen and read like snippets of interviews of him talking about the internment experience, but I'd like to see this. This is a longer, like a documentary interview with him. I'll share it below. All right, everyone. Listen, if you're still here, it's a miracle because we've been sitting here for a while now. I have 4 more things to show you, and we're going to call it a day. So this is my very first cross-stitch subscription box. And I only got 1 month. You can do month by month on this one. This is put together by Cotton and Twine. It's a company out of England. And they put together a box with a pattern, threads. Let me show you how pretty look at all the pretty colors in these threads. They're bright, beautiful colors, right? You get threads, you get fabric. Although they sent 14 count Aida, I didn't want to use 14 count. I used my own. They sent a hoop, and so like things you need to finish it. So this one, they sent a hoop, and then you can see how the hoop is covered in ribbon. See how you see the hoop underneath and it has ribbon? They sent the ribbon for finishing that part of it too, and then a needle. So it's like it's a kit in a box, basically. It's a little pricey. So subscription boxes. I've tried them before for watercolors. This is my first cross stitch one. And what I would say for subscription boxes is that you don't sign up for a subscription box expecting a bargain or like a great deal, because they're not a good deal. They're expensive. And you're paying for, you know, an exclusive pattern that's not going to be sold somewhere else, or you're paying for the company to curate, like to assemble these items that you maybe wouldn't have put together yourself. That's what you're paying for. So I had the same experience with watercolor boxes. I would get them and then I would be like, this is all I get. This is all that came in the box. With watercolor, it's different because a lot of the items aren't exclusive. So like you can go to your art store and find them. So when you price them out, sometimes you do feel like, oh, I could have just gone, if I had put these together, it's you don't have the sense to put that particular set of items together. So the curation of those items, that's what you're paying for. With cross stitch though, I think the deal that you're getting is that you're getting a unique pattern that maybe won't be found somewhere else. these patterns are usually exclusive to the subscription box. So that's what you're paying for. So if you're okay with that, like I'm okay with that. I really fell in love with this Hope pattern, and I thought the colors were pretty. So I thought, let's try it. It's a little pricey. It was $45, and that includes the shipping from the UK. So $45 for a kid is a little on the pricey side. And, you have to pick and choose, I think. So another subscription that a lot of people seem to be doing is that Black Needle Society. And so to use them as an example, I did not sign up for the subscription, the monthly subscription for them, but I'm kind of kicking myself now because I've seen unboxing videos, and the latest one that just came out was an ink circles pattern. I think it's another 115 by 115 pattern, and it's called, well, I don't remember what the pattern is called, but the theme is transportation. The theme of the box is travel and transportation. So of course, it's a pattern that has a bicycle in it, and it has other forms of transportation. It's a very cute pattern, and you don't know if, like, Tracy Horner at Ink Circles, because she made it for the box, it's probably not going to be sold in her shop. So that would be the reason for getting, like, that box is expensive. It's over $100, I think, for that subscription box. And they throw in a lot of extra items that are not stitchy. So when I've seen unboxings of it, I've thought, I don't know if I want like doodads and knickknacks. Really, I don't know if I'm going to use. They're all beautiful. They're really pretty. But that kind of, I don't know, it's a lot of money. I don't know if I'm going to even use all the things, and they don't always include fabric. They include threads and a pattern, but not necessarily fabric, I think. But it's the uniqueness of the pattern, I think. So you just have to decide before doing a subscription box like that. You have to know your reasons for doing it, because it's not going to be because you're getting a bargain or a good deal. They're a little bit pricey. Anyway, Hope Cotton and Twine. It's lovely, right? It's pretty. I like this Hope. The other thing about this pattern, it's going to always carry sentimental value now for me, because this was the February pattern. So it arrived, they shipped it at the end of February, and it arrived at the beginning of March. And the arrival of this pattern coincided with the other big stress for our family this month, which is that my dad was unexpectedly hospitalized. And he had my dad is, we were under the impression, he's 79 years old, and he's very fit. He goes to the YMCA to work out, and he eats well. He still works. He said he basically says that he would go crazy hanging around the house with mom all the time. So he works still. So he's very active, but he would never see doctors. He hates seeing doctors. He hates dealing with insurance. And he just had like a tornado of stuff wrong with him all of a sudden. A bacterial infection that like infected his blood and his bones, like almost a massive heart attack. He had like several arteries with like 80 to 99% blockage. So they put stents in, knee surgery. Like he can barely walk now. He's needing care from me, my mom, and my sister. So it was so stressful. He's home now. He just came home, and we're kind of tag teaming. My mom and sister and I are tag teaming, taking care of him. It's a very unusual experience, like unreal, surreal. I think surreal is the word. Experience to suddenly be a caretaker of your parents who have been so independent, like they've been independent, and all of a sudden they need to 100% rely on you. We were none of the three of us were ready for that. We did not see that coming. So that was really a blow to us this month. And we've spent a lot of time, hospital visits. He's going to have so many follow-up appointments. My mom's just cooking all the time, and he's with my sister. We're like all figuring out who's going to take him to what appointments. And he's got like therapists coming to the house. It's just so much. Like we went from thinking everything was okay with dad, like nothing. He was at work basically, and he's like, "Oh, I feel a little pain in my knee," and then all of a sudden he's in the hospital. He's getting fevers. Things are happening. So that was a big stressor. But I came home from the hospital one day, and I looked, and this pattern had come, and I just thought, we need this. I'm stitching on it. So I didn't get very far on it, but it's, talking about reasons for getting a subscription box, you really have to connect with it emotionally for it to feel like it's worthwhile. It's worth the money you spend on it. You know what I mean? So this is always going to be a time capsule now of what was going on. Like, I started stitching this. It's going to remind me of my dad and how we all my mom and sister and I are pretty close anyway, but I feel like we've gotten closer, like pulling together to try to figure all this out. So Hope by Cotton and Twine. I canceled, so you can do month by month, and I canceled the one for next month, like the box for March, because it really wasn't really my style. That's a nice thing about Cotton and Twine. They'll show, like, this pattern, it was up on their website. So you can decide if you like the pattern or not. That's another reason why I never signed up for that Black Needle Society one, because they don't show you the pattern ahead of time. So you don't know what you're getting. So if you get the pattern and then you don't like it, then it's like, well, that's, that might not be worthwhile for you. I did sign up for one. Black Needle Society does these retreats in a box, they call it. So they're going to have a pattern and like knickknacks and things, but they're planning a whole weekend virtual retreat in August so that you can stitch on the pattern, but also meet other cross stitchers virtually. And they have programs and things set up. So that would be another reason for signing up for a particular box. If it's an experience, it comes with social events and things like that. So just thinking, if anyone's thinking of signing up, there's pros and cons, and you want to think about if it's going to be worthwhile. Okay, next pattern is, I love linens and threads, and every year they do a mystery sampler. This is the one from 2020, and it's called Friends and Family. I love it. It's like a Quaker style sampler, but it's called Friends and Family because you stitch the initials of your family members in all the gaps. I can't wait to do that. And the reason why I wanted to start this, and the reason this goes back to why I ordered so many blues by DMC. A few videos ago, or maybe a couple of videos ago, Jacob from Modern Folk Embroidery, he shared his deer sampler, which he stitches in wool a lot of time. He uses DMC too, but that one he had done in wool. And he suggested a color palette. And the color palette he had used was 3 blues and an ochre color. So a light blue, a medium blue, a dark blue, and then an ochre for contrast. And so when I saw that deer sampler of his, I'll link it below. You can take a look at it. It was beautiful. And it's a small sampler. He was doing what I had originally been doing on my first pandemic sampler. He was self-variegating it. Basically, he would do like maybe 10 stitches in one color, then do 10 stitches in another color, and then do 10 stitches in another one, and then 10 stitches in the next one, and then keep switching it around. And he had some motifs in that sampler that were solid, like he would just do them in just the dark blue, for example. And then he had some that he variegated. And I loved that palette. I'm terrible at putting palettes together, like color. I have no sense of color. I appreciate color, but I cannot create color palettes. So when I saw that one, I thought, I want to try that. So that's what I'm using for linens and threads. So here's what it is so far. And if I show you the pattern, I'll show you where I am in it. So I am basically right up here in this corner. I started in this top left corner. And the idea is that I'm going to leave some motifs solid color. So you see I have like this ochre is solid, this navy blue is solid, this blue one is solid, this light blue is solid. But right here, there's going to be this enormous motif right here. I'm going to variegate that one. So I'm going to have solid, 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 solid all around it. But this motif and probably this floral one right here, this and this one, I'm going to variegate those two. Everything else I'll keep solid. So that will provide some nice contrast, but also provide some nice patches of color. And then the initials, I'll make all different colors probably, like choose different colors for each one. So there's an alphabet that comes with this too, so that you can stitch family initials. And the nice thing about the linens and thread samplers is that they're free. So this is up. You can go get it. It's free. I'll link it below. You can, tricky, but it's not tricky, but you have to then go to the 2020 sampler and download each month's part separately. They do not have one file that has everything in it necessarily. So that you have to download multiple files, but it's a free pattern. And you got to grab them while you can, because they archive, like every few years, they archive the oldest one. So they recently archived the 2018 one. So probably next year they'll archive 2019, and then the following year they'll archive 2020. And at that time you can still get it, but then it'll only be in their shop for purchase. So if you like Quaker samplers, this is a good one. I think this will be a good one to do. And I'm loving I'll show you the colors again. It's a really, really nice palette. Really grateful to Jacob. He has a lot of good ideas. I like his sense of color too. He uses really pretty colors. The DMCs that I'm using, this darkest blue is 823. And then the medium blue is 798. That's that one, the big motif up top. And then the lightest blue is 3325, which this is on another platinum, 32 count platinum Lugana Murano. And the light blue is barely visible. See how it's kind of a shadow? You can see it there a little bit. But you can just barely see it on this fabric. So I think it works. And then the ochre is 3826. Really nice palette. I love it. I wish there's that website, I think it's colorpalettes.com, where there's someone who's taking, like, they'll take a photograph and then they'll pull all the colors out of it and form a palette out of that. I've seen, is it a Pandemic or maybe one of the, I think it's the sampler, on the Facebook group there's a Facebook group where you can share photos of your sampler as you stitch it for linens and threads. And, someone did a really beautiful sampler from that cross stitch palettes. I think that's what it is. I'll see if I can find that and link that below too. So if you're like me and you struggle with palettes, that's another resource you can use for putting colors together. Okay, moving along, guys. We got 2 left. Okay, so this is another fabric by X Ju Designs. This is 9 by 11 and it's about $5 in her Etsy shop. So if you want to experiment with some of her fabrics, she's got some small ones you can use. This is a light coffee color. I love it. Very, very pretty. It's 28 count. It might be a 28 count Zweigart. So like, I don't know what Lugana, it's whatever they call their, I think they call their 28 count Lugana maybe. I don't remember. But the pattern is a pattern that I found on Etsy. Let me get my needle sorted out one sec here. It's by a designer called Happy Mood Point. I'll link it below. And this is their decorative borders sampler. I'm stitching it 1/1 with a DMC on 28 count. There we go. You can see that a little better. Maybe I'll hold it up closer. And what it is, you've seen these, surely you've seen these before. It's like a series of mini borders, and it's 3 rows of them. So like mini border, all the way down, and then more mini borders in the middle, and then there'll be another column of mini borders down here. So it's really nice variation. If you get tired, like you don't want to stitch a one border all the way across, you could if you want to, but instead you get like these little snippets. So like, for example, this heart motif, it gets repeated maybe like 2 more times, and then that's the length of that border. So it'll go to like here, probably. And I'm using DMC. Look at the colors I'm using. I just chose a whole bunch of bright colors. Check that out. So I'm going to just alternate different colors for the borders. I've already used like a teal and a pink, a bright pink. And the colors came from, I had shown this in an older video. I picked up, DMC has an anniversary set. It's 36 skeins, and it's all the colors from 3831 down to 3866. And this is nice because it has all these bright tones. It also had some of the skin tones that I want to use for Dreaming Girl. And these all came from that. So I didn't really know what else to do with them, but I thought these go great together. They just look pretty all together. So this border sampler is going to be a nice way to show them off. I may even use some of these bright colors for my dancer sampler too. There's some nice ones in there. So Happy Mood Point Decorative Borders Sampler is that one. 1/1 on 28 count. Last one. So last one is also on a coffee. I got another coffee from Xju Designs. And this is a Lila cross stitch pattern. Can I get it? I don't know if you'll really be able to see it that well. It's called Antique Tile Sampler. And it's really beautiful. So many of Lila cross stitch patterns are really beautiful. It's basically different sized square tiles that are all layered together. And I love it because you can basically pick and choose. It's an enormous pattern. So it has a big tile, small tiles, like larger tiles. And then if you're doing it on a smaller fabric like me, you can just pick a few of the tiles to do. You don't have to do the whole thing. And I like this because I've been searching and searching and searching for a way to showcase the really beautiful hydrangea silk thread that I had picked up from Mrs. Sadus. There's no way for my camera to show how beautiful it's purples, blues. It really represents, if you look at a hydrangea flower, it really does have all these shades in it. And I had started a project last month, another Lila cross stitch, which I had been doing 1/1 on 25 count. So it was very tiny stitches and it's beautiful. It's the Romati sampler. And I was using just one strand. But when you stitch so tiny, the variegation and the color was getting lost. It basically looked kind of like a ghostly, like a bluish color. Beautiful. But it didn't really showcase how beautiful this thread was. So I've been looking for something bigger. So this 28 count, on the border sampler, I'm stitching 1/1. On this one, I'm stitching over 2. So the stitches are enormous. It'll really give a chance to show off the silk. And it makes for easier stitching too, because the stitches are just bigger. I'm seeing like purples and blues. They're not coming together on the camera, I think. You're seeing a little variegation maybe, but you're not seeing the purple. So that will be one tile. This will be a nice one to do, I think, because it's symmetrical pattern. So like these kind of floral shapes will happen down here at the bottom of the tile too. And then there's a motif in the center. Really, really pretty. So that's what I had going in March. Busy month, stressful month, but still there's time for stitching. So I think April is going to be about survival and stitching. So hopefully I will make progress on some things. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We're just we're taking one day at a time in my family, and we're, doing what we can, and wherever I squeeze in a little stitching will be great. I was just off for spring break. So we're back at school on Monday. So that will, school is always there hanging around, taking up a lot of personal time. So, we'll just have to see how it goes. But if you stuck around for this long, thank you so much for listening and for being interested and for leaving comments. And, one of the things I've really enjoyed about Flosstube is connecting in small ways with other stitchers. It's so great that we have a stitching community. I just love that. I love that we get ideas from each other and share ideas and compliment each other and encourage each other. And it's, the little moments of interaction on Instagram and on YouTube. I've really been enjoying that too. So if you're still here and, want to pipe in on anything, feel free. I'm always happy to hear from you. Thanks so much, and happy stitching, and I'll see you in a month.